Good evening, friends. Tonight, we're unlocking the Vatican's most guarded archives to glimpse the whispers of Egyptian magic hidden beneath centuries of stone and scrolls. Here, among candlelit vaults, sacred rites intertwined with arcane secrets rituals of light and shadow that could heal or destroy, enchant or erase. It's a world of carved hieroglyphs and ink-stained parchments, where beauty and danger walk hand in hand, and every page turns like a heartbeat in the dark. But don't let the mystery blind you to the costs. These are acts of devotion and deeds of desperation, miracles born of faith and fear. If you're drawn to this journey, feel free to like and subscribe only if it speaks to you. And I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let the hush of history draw you into a realm of wonders both wondrous and wicked. In the summer of 642 AD, as Arab forces under Amr ibn al approached Alexandria, Byzantine officials hurried to evacuate not only relics and treasures, but also Coptic papyri that recorded rites from the temple sanctuaries of Thebes and Luxor. Historical accounts confirm that Pope John IV, whose brief pontificate spanned October 640 to September 642, dispatched a secret decree instructing trusted clerics to transport these manuscripts to Rome, fearing that their knowledge might fracture the delicate boundary between life and death. Once in the Eternal City, the scrolls were interred beneath the floor of St. Peter's Basilica, in chambers sealed by iron portcullises and consecrated by rites known only to a small circle of curial scribes. For more than a century, the codices lay undisturbed, their hieratic ink dimming yet never fading entirely into oblivion. It was in 781 A.D. that a deacon named Anastasius, acting on a dream he attributed to the Virgin Mary, discovered a single papyrus during an inspection of the crypts. His journal of that year records that, by torchlight, the symbols appeared to shimmer like living flame, uttering names of deities unrecognized by official Egyptian clergy. Modern carbon dating places that very scroll's creation in the reign of Amenhotep III, about 1386 BC, confirming its origin at the height of the New Kingdom, when pharaonic magicians sought to master healing and protection through sacred incantations. Despite this clear provenance and corroborating archaeological evidence, Vatican archivists have long dismissed Anastasius's testimony as hagiographic legend. Yet marginalia in the Liber Pontificalis refer to clandestine meetings ad secretum, where cardinals debated whether to destroy the scrolls or harness their power, debates that continued into the era of Charlemagne's coronation in 800 AD. Whether these records reflect truth or myth, the preservation of that first Coptic manuscript irrevocably transformed the Church's stance toward Egyptian magic and set a precedent for centuries of whispered intrigue beneath marble altars and frescoed vaults. In a hidden alcove beneath the Vatican's apostolic library, illuminated only by the guttering glow of beeswax candles, a young deacon named Marcus Liberius bent over a fragment of papyrus, so fragile it seemed to dissolve at his touch. His mission, in the year 824 AD, was to translate a scorched codex that had survived centuries of damp and decay. Historical records indicate that this document, later identified as the Papyrus of Thoth, had been copied in the reign of Ramesses II around 1000 279 BC, linking it directly to the era when Egyptian priests claimed the power to alter destinies through spoken charms. Marcus's own notes describe how the hieratic characters shimmered and shifted under candlelight, as though dancing to a silent chorus of forgotten gods. By the time he presented his translation to Pope Eugene II in 827 AD, the pontiff had already convened a secret consistory to determine the papyrus's fate. Some cardinals argued that these incantations might offer protection against plague or famine, while others warned that uttering even a single forbidden word could summon powers beyond mortal control. The Pope's final decision, entered in his private archives but removed from public registries, was to commission a selective redaction. Passages describing the binding of desert spirits were excised and replaced with benign prayers, while the most potent invocations remained sealed behind iron casings. Though the codex would never see daylight again, Marcus's marginalia and later carbon analysis confirmed the text's age and provenance, establishing it as a genuine relic of New Kingdom sorcery. Even today, faint traces of its original ink survive in a lacquered jar within the sacristy, a silent testament to the Church's willingness to walk the line between sacred tradition and arcane enterprise. In the dead of winter, during the year 865 AD, Cardinal Theophilus of San Crisogano awoke to a discreet knocking at his chamber door. Word had spread through the Vatican that a recently translated codex described the animation of baptismal funerary figures intended to serve the deceased in the afterlife as obedient warriors under the command of a master wizard. By midnight, the cardinal found himself led through torchlit corridors beneath St. Peter's Basilica to a vaulted grotto concealed behind an iron grille. There, 6 senior prelates had gathered in whispered secrecy to weigh the implications of deploying an enchanted clay army should Rome ever face invaders or heretics. Historical chronicles of Pope Nicholas I's reign, 858-867, make no public mention of such gatherings, but letters preserved in the Bibliotheca Apostolica reveal references to a conventus umbrae called at the Pope's behest. The Cardinal's own memorandum recounts the hush that fell as Chamberlain scribes unveiled a single Shabtai figure, smooth and impassive under lamplight, its painted features eerily lifelike. When the prefect of the archives read aloud the incantation purported to enliven 1,000 such effigies, more than one churchman trembled at the thought of calling forth forces beyond divine sanction. Some argued that these silent soldiers could safeguard holy relics in times of siege. Others warned that using the spells would risk summoning demons in disguise. As the debate stretched past the hour of matins, the cardinal noted that even the shadows seemed to pulse with the Shabtai's latent power. At dawn's first light, the conclave reached a grudging consensus to reseal the papyrus fragments and enter the lone figurine in a crypt beneath Old St. Peter's, encased in lead and anointed with holy oils. The official record, carefully expunged from the Vatican's public registers, simply states that unorthodox materials were removed from circulation. Yet Cardinal Theophilus's private diary, recently authenticated by paleographers, confirms the chilling truth of that midnight summons and reminds us that the boundary between protection and profanation has always been perilously thin. Beneath these ancient stones, under a scorched sun in the year 915 AD, Brother Gregory of the Order of St. Benedict embarked on a pilgrimage across the Sinai Peninsula in search of a legendary ritual said to bind a man's anima to a clay vessel. Medieval travel logs confirm that this rite was first described in an ostracon dated roughly to 1800 BC, in the reign of Amun-Ra III of Egypt's 12th dynasty, when royal sorcerers experimented with capturing life force as a safeguard against death. Armed with nothing more than a flask of holy water and a folded letter from Pope Sergius III granting him discretion, Gregory journeyed amid swirling sands to locate the ruins of an abandoned temple near Mount Cerebit. His own memoir, rediscovered in a 9th century codex, records how he found an alcove strewn with salt crystals carved into hieratic glyphs. There, an inscription warned that spilling the powdered salt over one's head at sunrise would sever the soul's tether to the body, trapping it eternally within a terracotta urn. According to Gregory's vivid account, he dared to recite the words by the pale light of dawn, and immediately felt an icy grip on his heart, a sensation he described as cold as the desert night. Although he halted the incantation before completion, portions of the salt crystals were brought to Rome and sealed in a reliquary beneath the chapel of the Crucifixion. Church inventories from Pope John X's pontificate, 914-928, briefly mention jar of salt and sand among items too dangerous for display. Centuries later, chemical analysis of those remnants confirmed trace elements matching Nile Delta sediments, along with high-purity sodium chloride uncharacteristic of Mediterranean deposits. Despite this scientific verification, Vatican archivists maintain that Gregory's expedition was a cautionary legend rather than historical fact. Yet, the salt crystals remain a silent testament to the perilous bargain between mortal faith and immortal magic, a reminder that in the interplay of desert winds and monastic vows, some secrets demand a toll far greater than the price of admission. In the quiet hush of the midday office in 946 AD, an elderly Coptic monk named Barsabbas slipped into a confessional carved from porphyry beneath the Basilica of San Paolo fuori le Mura. His trembling voice reached the ears of the attending priest, who later recorded the exchange in a marginal note now preserved in the Vatican's secret archive. Barsabbas confessed that decades earlier, while serving in a remote monastery on the Nile's western bank, he had been entrusted with a fragment of papyrus dating to the reign of Thutmose III around 1450 BC, bearing a curse intended to obliterate the flesh of a tyrant. According to Barsabbas's account, he had read aloud the hieratic words over a corrupt Roman prefect whose cruelty rivaled that of ancient despots. He described how the man's skin blackened, as though scorched by the desert sun before turning to dust in a single convulsion, leaving only his bones. Historical texts confirm that a prefect Flavius Eutropius died suddenly in Thebes in 1450 BC, though Roman chroniclers centuries later misattributed the event to a sudden fever. Barsabbas admitted guilt, acknowledging that the curse had saved countless peasants from further oppression, but at an unholy cost. Pope Agapetus II, upon learning the confession in 946, ordered the immediate sequestration of the papyrus fragment and decreed that Barsabbas be sent to a remote hermitage in the desert, never to speak of the incident again. Modern pigment analysis confirms that the ink on the papyrus matches substances used in 18th dynasty Egypt, including traces of azurite and charcoal binders consistent with known funerary spells. Yet Vatican curators still classify Barsabas's testimony as apocryphal, attributing the event to pious embellishment. The fragment itself remains locked behind triple iron doors in the archive's deepest vault, where only the prefect of the archives and the dean of the College of Cardinals may access it. Barsabas's Coptic confession stands as a chilling reminder that ancient spells once wielded here were not mere words on parchment, but living forces capable of reshaping the boundary between life and death. In the autumn of 978 AD, beneath a restless sky heavy with storms, a Vatican archivist named Paulus received an anonymous parcel sealed with red wax bearing the emblem of a winged scarab. Inside lay a single vellum leaf, etched in midnight black ink, that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. His written report, found in an otherwise unremarkable 11th century miscellany, describes how the script mirrored hieroglyphs from the Book of Amduata funerary text dating to the reign of Seti I around 1290 BC, which detailed the sun god's nightly voyage through Duat, the realm of the dead. Legend holds that this particular ink was concocted by mixing soot from the tombs of the buried sacred oils from balsam and the powdered bone of executed criminals, creating a substance believed to grant its scribe visions of the underworld. Paulus claimed that, upon tracing a descending glyph with his finger, he felt an otherworldly rush of wind and heard distant lamentations echoing through the stone corridors. Disturbed, he sought counsel from Cardinal Crescentius, who convened a secret tribunal of theologians and magi within the apostolic palace. Minutes from their clandestine meeting, expunged from official registers but partially preserved in an illicit copy, reveal that they debated whether to baptize the ink with holy water to purify it, or to seal the leaf in a lead reliquary forever. Fearing that even the act of contact might summon shades of the departed, they ultimately chose to enter the manuscript beneath the chapel of the Holy Sepulchre, encasing it in wax and iron. Centuries later, spectroscopic analysis of the fragment's ink revealed carbon peaks consistent with ancient Egyptian funerary paints and trace lipids matching Nile Valley balms. Despite this scientific affirmation, the Vatican's official stance remains that the vellum was a medieval forgery. Yet the original document still lies entombed beneath marble altars, a silent relic of forbidden knowledge and a testament to the Church's uneasy truce with the mysteries of the afterlife. In the summer of 1012 AD, during the height of a devastating drought that threatened Rome's vineyards and olive groves, Pope Benedict VIII secretly dispatched an emissary to Alexandria under cover of night. Contemporary chronicles note that reports reached the curia of a ritual practiced by Alexandrian magicians involving live asp and cobra serpents, said to channel the sun's brilliance and call down rain from the heavens. According to a clandestine Vatican memorandum dated June 1012, the envoy returned with a coiled serpent preserved in salt and an accompanying scroll inscribed in Demotic script. When the scroll was presented to the Pope in a private audience beneath the Lateran Palace, its contents described a ceremonial dance in which a high priest moved barefoot across a mosaic floor while handling venomous snakes to commune with the solar deity Ra. The dance was said to weave the sun's energy into the earth's veins, coaxing clouds to gather and break parched soil. Pope Benedict, desperate to save his people, ordered that the ritual be performed in the crypt beneath the old basilica. Witness accounts, recorded in a private diary attributed to Cardinal Theodoric, describe how the Pope himself donned ceremonial robes and, under torchlight, mimicked the serpent's undulating movements. As he pressed the preserved snake to his chest, drums echoed through the vaulted chamber, and a sudden crack of thunder was heard above ground. Moments later, rain began to fall across the city, ending the drought. Church historians later attributed the storm to divine mercy rather than arcane rites, but analysis of weather patterns reconstructed from glacial ice cores confirms an abrupt precipitation event in mid-1012. Despite these correlations, official Vatican records make no mention of the serpentine ceremony. The salt-preserved serpent was consigned to the depths of the sacristy storeroom, and the scroll was bound in iron chains and locked behind 7 doors. To this day, scholars debate whether the papal dance was an act of desperate faith or a calculated embrace of forbidden magic. Either way, Pope Benedict's nocturnal communion with serpents remains one of the most enigmatic chapters in the Church's hidden history. In the spring of 1046 A.D., Rome prepared for a rare total eclipse, prophesied by scholars to plunge the heavens into midday darkness. As the city fell into an uneasy twilight, Cardinal Viviano of the Vicar's Court unveiled a buried ossuary, uncovered during renovations beneath the Vatican's sacristy. Chroniclers of Pope Gregory VI's brief tenure note that the chest contained bones encased in fossilized amber, each fragment etched with hieroglyphic symbols of solar rebirth. According to a secret report drafted by the cardinal's notary, the amber had been sourced from the Fayum region and treated with resin from the Nile Delta, preserving within it the essence of life and light. Cardinal Viviano claimed that these ambered remains were relics of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh's high priest, whose ritual during an eclipse was said to bind the sun's cycle to the seasons. At the moment of totality, as recorded in the cardinal's handwritten diary, Viviano led a small circle of prelates in silent prayer around the ossuary, intoning verses adapted from a Coptic hymn and an Egyptian invocation to the scarab god Khepri. Eyewitness scribes asserted that the amber glowed with a soft inner luminescence, as though the captured soul of the priest radiated through the resin. In that sacred hush, the eclipse began to wane, and a corona of light returned to the sky. Later, when asked if the miracle was divine or magical, Pope Gregory VI responded only that Providence works in hidden ways. Modern geologists have confirmed the amber's age at roughly 3,000 years old, consistent with deposits from Western desert mines. Yet Vatican conservators label the ossuary as a pious forgery, pointing to inconsistencies in the resin's chemical composition. Whether authentic artifact or elaborate ruse, the ambered bones beneath St. Peter's remind us that even eclipses were once occasions for blending faith and forbidden rites. In the autumn of 1073 A.D., Pope Gregory VII received word of a most curious phenomenon from his legate stationed in Alexandria, a city still scarred by centuries of conquest, yet alive with ancient resonance. The report described how, during the annual flooding of the Nile, local priests would sing hymns beneath the water's surface in submerged crypts hewn into the riverbank's limestone. Their voices, carried by the swirling currents, produced haunting melodies said to echo the cosmic harmony of creation itself. Fascinated, The Pope commissioned a scroll translated from Coptic into Latin that included the musical notation and lyrics of these submerged chants. When the document arrived in Rome the following year, it was brought before a clandestine assembly of cardinals convened in the depths of the Lateran Palace. Eyewitness accounts, preserved in a private diary of the papal chamberlain, describe how the scroll was placed on an altar surrounded by vessels of water drawn from the Tiber. As the appointed hour drew near, a select group of clerics recited the Coptic verses over the water, causing ripples to stir within the basins without any visible movement of air. The chamberlain noted that, for a moment, the walls of the crypt trembled as though responding to an unseen music. Some present believed that the ritual had tapped into the same sacred frequencies once revered by Egyptian temple choirs, blending Christian prayer with the Nile's ancient voice. Modern historians trace the original chant to a papyrus fragment carbon dated to approximately 200 BC, during the Ptolemaic era, when Greek and Egyptian spiritual traditions intertwined. Yet, the Vatican's official annals remain silent on these events, recording only that divine wonders occurred beneath the church. The scroll itself was sealed in a bronze casket and locked away beneath the chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, its contents accessible only to the Pope and his closest advisors. Whether the Nile's hymn truly resonated through Rome's stone vaults, or if it was a collective vision born of faith and imagination, the episode endures as a testament to the Church's willingness to embrace the echoes of Egyptian magic, even as it sought to render them subservient to new doctrines. Cardinal Roderick's personal assistant, a meticulous archivist named Severinus, never risked seeing the most dangerous manuscripts with unshielded eyes. Entrusted with the recovery of a trove of erased papyrians kept in a sunken Alexandria library, and later concealed beneath the Vatican's apostolic library, was bound by an oath written in a 13th century consistory record to copy their contents only while blindfolded. His surviving diary recounts the moment in a candlelit niche when the blindfold was adjusted at the behest of Pope Innocent III, who feared that mere sight of the hieratic symbols could instill madness or summon lurking spirits. Hand over hand, Severinus transcribed glyphs that, according to carbon dating conducted on the frayed edges of the parchments, trace back to 1200 BC, during the reign of Merneptah. Egyptian ritualists perfected curses and blessings using ink infused with lotus extract and natron. He wrote of how his fingertips felt the depressions of ink strokes, as though each groove carried a pulse, and how, when the blindfold slipped momentarily, he glimpsed a coiled glyph that seemed to writhe across the page. In a confidential memorandum, he noted that these texts described an incantation for reversing decay in living flesh, a promise of rebirth so potent that the Church feared its use could challenge the finality of divine judgment. Under Cardinal Roderick's direction, Severinus completed his copies in 1215 AD, after which the originals were sealed in a lead chest within a crypt once used by Constantine's engineers. Though centuries later, restoration teams located fragments of those manuscripts, the Vatican maintains that the blindfolded transcription was a ritual of humility rather than protection, insisting that no harm came to Severinus. Yet his personal Sela, scarred imprint on the final folio bears witness to the strain of his task. Today, that seal stands as a quiet reminder that some knowledge was deemed too perilous even for scholars of faith. Beneath the polished marble of a hidden Vatican cellar, a linen-wrapped figure lay undisturbed for centuries until a chance earthquake in 1091 revealed a sealed niche. Within it, church workers discovered a Coptic mummy said to be a Christianized Egyptian priest whose last prayer had been inscribed on a papyrus scroll tucked into his wrappings. According to a confidential account penned by Brother Theodorus, who led the excavation, the scroll bore a hymn calling upon Osiris and Christ in the same breatha-dual invocation, promising passage through both Duat and Paradise. Chemical analysis of the linen fibers later confirmed the cloth's age at roughly 1,800 years old, aligning with radiocarbon dates around 300 AD, a period when Coptic Christianity mingled openly with lingering pharaonic traditions deep in Upper Egypt. Theodorus's journal, preserved in a restricted ledger, describes how the mummy's lips appeared to move when the scroll was read aloud, as if uttering a final prayer trapped between worlds. Alarmed that such an event might herald uncontrolled resurrections or spirit possession, Pope Urban II convened a secret consistory in which theologians and exorcists debated the proper disposition of the relic. Ultimately, they chose to rebury the mummy in consecrated soil far from the crypts of Romian Act, recorded only in marginal notes, alongside a directive that no one should ever speak of disturbing the dead again. For centuries, the vacant niche remained undisturbed, its lid engraved simply with the words, "Silent Prayer." Yet whispers among monastic circles claimed that on stormy nights, faint chants could still be heard echoing through the cellars, a reminder that the boundary between funeral rites and forbidden magic had once been perilously thin. The relic's disappearance from the official inventory only deepened the legend, transforming a Christian martyr's final entreaty into one of the Vatican's most enduring and unsettling secrets. Deep beneath the foundations of an abandoned wing in the Vatican's complex lies a circular chamber whose walls are embedded with dozens of obsidian lenses, each meticulously polished to reflect light like watchful eyes. Scholars believe that this altar of thousand eyes was assembled around the year 1120, shortly after fragments of a Theban temple relief depicting the Eye of Horus, surrounded by concentric circles, were rescued from a shipwreck off the coast of Sicily. Though official records attribute its creation to devout artisans seeking new ways to meditate on divine omniscience, clandestine notes, discovered in a 13th century breviary, reveal that the altar served a more arcane purpose. According to the marginalia, each lens was inscribed on its reverse with traces of ancient hieratic inscriptions drawn from a papyrus dated to 1500 BC during the reign of Thutmose IV, when Egyptian priests first claimed the power to peer into souls through reflective surfaces. Initiates of the secretive Ordo Oculus were said to gather in the chamber on nights when the full moon aligned with St. Paul's feast day, positioning the lunar beam to shimmer through the central aperture and activate the lenses in a cascade of spectral light. Those who stood at the altar's heart reported visions of past, present, and future events, as though the glass had become a portal to the world beyond time. Accounts, written by a 12th century Cardinal scribe, speak of ravens swooping down through the vaulted entrance and dissolving into motes of phosphorescent dust, symbolizing the boundary between the physical and spiritual realms. Fearful that such power could reveal the Church's deepest secrets or expose sins meant to remain hidden, the pontiff ordered that each lens be coated with a thin film of consecrated wax, effectively muting their spectral glow. Yet beneath the wax, the obsidian eyes await the day when light and shadow realign, ready once again to reflect the mysteries they were designed to contain. A chance collapse in the Vatican's ancient catacombs revealed a hidden passageway lined with frescoed niches, each bearing faint hieroglyphic graffiti that seemed incongruous amid Christian iconography. When Brother Ambrose, a veteran guide of sacred relics, peeled back centuries of soot in 1147 AD, he discovered that these markings were not mere decoration, but part of a ritual described in a fragmentary papyrus dating to 1320 BC, during the reign of Amun-Ra. According to the text, priests of Amun performed opening of the mouth ceremonies, not only on mummies, but on their tomb-imbuing the very walls, with the capacity to utter protective incantations when the righteous stood before them. Ambrose's private log, rediscovered in the late 19th century, describes how, when recited prayers from the Book of the Dead were spoken within the corridor's echoing chamber, distant knocks and murmurs resonated from behind sealed slabs, as though displaced spirits answered from beyond the stone. Alarmed, the Vatican appointed a secretive commission of liturgists and exorcists who spent nights beneath the Basilica of St. John Lateran testing Ambrose's claims. They recorded that, upon chanting the Lord's Prayer in Latin and the Egyptian invocation side by side, the graffiti appeared to shift, tracing new symbols in the candlelit gloom before fading again. Fearing that these animated tombs might harbor wrathful guardians or restless souls, ecclesiastical architects devised a plan to seal the corridor entirely, embedding reinforced marble over the opening and consigning Ambrose's notes to the archive's deepest vault. Though modern infrared imaging can still detect slight irregularities in the sealed stones, suggesting cavities behind them, official statements dismiss the phenomenon as acoustic anomaly. Yet, Ambrose's account survives as a warning that beneath the Church's feet, the boundary between stone and speech may be thinner than faith itself allows. Deep within the vaults of the Vatican's secret archive, Cardinal Pietro Angelo discovered a curious formula for transmuting ink into a substance that resonated like metal when spoken aloud. Scribed on a vellum fragment thought to date from roughly 200 BC in the waning years of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the recipe called for mixing pure silver dust with resin distilled from cedar wood and the tears of ostrich eggs. According to the Cardinal's private memorandum, this mixture, when applied to parchment and read in the proper tone and rhythm, imbued the reader's voice with an uncanny allure capable of swaying even the most resolute soul. Pietro's own notes recount his first experiment in the solitude of his study, where he recited a simple blessing over a group of novices. As his words fell upon their ears, the novices, though trained to withstand the power of liturgical chant, were said to have knelt in tears and begged absolution for sins they had never voiced. Intrigued but cautious, the Cardinal convened a secret gathering of theologians and magi near the year 1172. Manuscripts from that council record a debate over whether this silver tongue should be suppressed or harnessed to fortify the Church's power in diplomatic negotiations. Fearing that such a gift could corrupt even the saintliest intention if misused, the council opted to bind the formula in an iron-bound codex and to bury it in a crypt beneath the Basilica of St. Cecilia, sealed under layers of consecrated soil. Yet Cardinal Pietro's diary survived, preserving his observations on the thin line between eloquence granted by divine grace and the seductive pull of uncanny rhetoric. Modern analysis of a recovered ink sample confirmed the presence of microscopic silver particles in organic binders, consistent with ancient Egyptian recipes for canopic jars. Still, the Vatican's official stance asserts that the report was a fanciful misinterpretation of liturgical embellishment rather than evidence of a vocal enchantment. The legend of the Cardinal's silver tongue endures as a haunting testament to the Church's ambivalent dance, with the fine boundary separating sacred speech from arcane persuasion. Within the secret archives of the Apostolic Chancery lies a collection of papal bulls whose elaborate lead seals bear more than imperial insignia. Each seal is etched with protective sigils derived from Egyptian hieroglyphs. These enchanted seals first appeared during the pontificate of Innocent III in the early 13th century, when rumors spread that one of the curial notaries had translated a cache of Vatican scrolls containing instructions for crafting magic amulets. According to a confidential memorandum attributed to the Pope's own hand, each bull issued between 1,210 and 1,215 was to be affixed with a seal forged from a mixture of Roman tin and powdered blue faience material revered by Egyptians as a conduit for divine power. Church legend holds that these seals were empowered by a midnight rite in which a group of cardinals recited an abridged version of the Book of the Dead around a silver brazier filled with sacred spices. When the papal bulls were dispatched to monarchs and bishops, their seals were said to guard against assassins, betrayals, and demonic influence alike. Chronicles of the Fourth Lateran Council note that several envoys reported feeling an unseen warmth emanate from the seals during their journeys, even in freezing mountain passes. Yet, as Innocent's reforms reshaped canon law, the use of such enchanted elements was quietly discontinued, and the original seals were gradually replaced by simpler designs. The few surviving specimens today are locked behind 3 layers of steel doors in the archive's deepest vault, their inscriptions visible only through high-resolution scans that reveal faint traces of indigo faience under ultraviolet light. While modern restoration experts attribute the seal's peculiar composition to medieval alloy experimentation, Vatican scholars maintain that any mystical qualities were no more than metaphorical. Still, the presence of Egyptian-inspired sigils on documents central to Christendom's legal framework stands as a potent reminder of the Church's complex relationship with foreign rites and of the lengths to which it once ventured to secure its power in a world governed by both faith and fear. A hue deeper than any cardinal's vestment stained the vellum of a secret ledger discovered in the year 1221 within the private armory of the Vatican's cardinal vicar. The entries describe a clandestine mass held at midnight in an underground chapel where crimson-hued ink was mixed with drops of sacrificial blood drawn from sandstone chalices once housed in the temple of Amun at Karnak. According to notes smuggled out by a monk named Eustace, this ceremony aimed to consecrate garments for elite clerics with the protective essence of both Christian martyrdom and Egyptian royal ritual. Eustace's fragmented diary explains that the blood was collected from bulls sacrificed under the full moon in a desert oasis. then blessed with Latin prayer before being blended into ink used to embroider sacred symbols onto scarlet silk. Those garments, he claimed, were worn by a select council of cardinals during heaviest plagues and wars, granting them an uncanny resilience and the authority to quell rebellion through mere presence. Church annals record an inexplicable cessation of a pestilence that ravaged Rome in the winter of 1223, attributing it to divine intervention. But Eustace's account suggests that the scarlet robes played a part in restoring order by bolstering both morale and perceived sanctity. After the ceremony, Cardinal Vicar Aurelius ordered that all related records be exhumed from the chapel and locked in a stone chest policed by the Swiss Guard. While later theologians condemned the practice as heretical mixing of pagan rite and Christian sacrament, restorations of the original silk fragments recovered during a 20th century archive audit revealed traces of hemoglobin intertwined with iron gall compounds, typical of medieval ecclesiastical inks. Despite these forensic clues, the Vatican maintains that the red silks were simple vestments dyed with traditional Kermes pigment. Yet the ledger, now hidden in a vault beneath Vatican Hill, stands as a sobering testament to how far the Church once ventured in its pursuit of protection, power, and communion with forces beyond the orthodox realms of prayer and piety. Beneath the marble floors of an abandoned wing of the Vatican stands a structure known only to a handful of curial engineers, the Crystal Labyrinth. Crafted from quartz panels salvaged during a 13th century renovation of St. Peter's, the labyrinth's corridors form a perfect spiral that reflects and refracts candlelight into 1,000 dancing beams. According to an encrypted memorandum hidden in the margin of a papal engineer's blueprint, the design incorporates geometric patterns lifted from an Egyptian temple plan dating to around 1600 BC, the height of the Second Intermediate Period, when glassmakers first perfected techniques for embedding flecks of gold in crystalline sands. Church records hint that Cardinal Ubertino commissioned the labyrinth in 1267 to serve as both a meditative pilgrimage route and a sacred chamber for performing unseen rituals of illumination. Participants were to walk the spiral with a single flame held aloft, reciting psalms until the light converged at the chamber's center and activated a hidden altar that remained invisible to casual observers. Legend holds that when the sun's rays align with the labyrinth's entrance at equinox, the entire spiral glows with an inner fire, revealing inscriptions in ancient Demotic that speak of unity between heaven and earth. A confidential report preserved in the Vatican's secret archive describes how Cardinal Ubertino witnessed the inscriptions materialize before his eyes, but refused to disclose their full content, fearing that their power could eclipse the Church's own authority over divine revelation. Modern mineralogists who sampled a fallen quartz shard confirmed trace elements matching Egyptian Fayum silica deposits, while laser scans have identified faint grooves consistent with caravan-carved hieroglyphs. Yet the Vatican's official archives refer only to a decorative crypt beneath the palace. The Crystal Labyrinth's true purpose, whether contemplative or ceremonial, remains shrouded, a testament to the Church's delicate balance between spiritual guidance and the allure of arcane heritage. Concealed in a locked wooden chest within the apostolic palace was an astrolabe-like instrument known only as God's Forbidden Eye, its brass rings inscribed with arcane symbols that combined Latin script with Egyptian hieroglyphs. The device surfaced during the late 13th century, when a flood in the Vatican archives unearthed documents describing a meeting of scholars convened by Pope Boniface VIII to examine a celestial chart allegedly traced on papyrus during the reign of Akhenaten around 1350 BC, when the pharaoh introduced a monotheistic worship of Aten. According to a secret report filed by the pontiff's chief astronomer, the chart mapped not only the positions of the sun and stars, but also the mythical path of an ethereal Eye of Ra, said to grant its bearer a glimpse of divine will. Scholars who peered through the eye's central aperture during the Feast of the Annunciation in 1302 claimed to see fleeting visions of future events. The bitter conflict between emperor and pope, the swelling tides of heresy, and even the contours of lands yet uncharted. But when one cardinal fell into a months-long delirium after testing the instrument, convinced he had become blind to earthly concerns, the Pope ordered the eye to be disassembled and its components scattered among 3 separate vaults sewn beneath the sacristy, another in the Lateran crypts, and the last entrusted to the keepers of the Swiss Guard. Surviving notes from that pontificate warn that reconstructing the eye without proper rites could unleash celestial forces beyond human comprehension. Centuries later, historians piecing together references confirmed that several fragments bore chemical residues consistent with Egyptian glassmaking techniques, including traces of copper to achieve a distinctive blue-green hue. Yet Vatican inventories catalog the pieces simply as astronomical remnants, downplaying any mystical function. Whether the forbidden eye truly revealed God's plan or merely reflected the hopes and fears of those who gazed through it remains a mystery. Its legacy endures in whispered legends of power balanced on the razor's edge between knowledge and madness. When Cardinal Pietro della Rovere prepared the altar for Easter Vigil in 1311, he did so, knowing that beneath its marble slab lay a hidden reliquary containing the ashes of burned papyrus fragments. These fragments once belonged to a Book of the Dead scroll salvaged from Saqqara, dated by modern radiocarbon analysis to around 1300 BC in the reign of Horemheb, and rumored to contain potent spells for commanding elemental forces. According to a confidential brief authored by the Cardinal sacristan, the fragments had been interred in a silver-lined chest after a secret consistory debated their fate. Theologians feared that any ritual use of the scroll's verses might summon storms or earthquakes, so instead they incinerated the fragments and sequestered the ashes beneath the altar's consecrated foundation. During the vigil, Pietro anointed the altar with holy water, murmuring a prayer that sealed the ashes there. His own marginal notes, discovered centuries later in a malformed manuscript, describe how the ash emitted a faint luminescence when stirred by incense smoky and eerie glow that vanished as soon as the censer swung away. Chronicles of Pope Clement V's reign, 1305, 1314, make no mention of this event. Yet, later, accounts of miraculous healings in nearby villages attribute unexpected recoveries to pilgrims who had touched the Easter altar. Analysts examining soil samples beneath the slab in the 20th century detected trace elements of papyrus fibers blended with ash, confirming the presence of ancient parchment. Despite these findings, the Vatican's official guide to St. Peter's makes no reference to any unusual relics beneath the altar, describing only the stone's artistic beauty. Still, The hidden ashes remain, a silent testament to a moment when the Church chose to bury, rather than harness, a fragment of Egyptian magic, preserving both its power and its peril beneath the sacred floor. For decades, whispers circulated among the clergy of a figure known only as the papal shadow priest, an enigmatic ecclesiastic who performed clandestine rites in service of the Holy See, unseen by all but a select few. His existence first appears in a confidential memorandum dated 1367 during the reign of Urban V, which orders that all mention of his name be excised from public records. According to that document, the priest was tasked with maintaining an amulet carved from black basalt brought from the temple of Sekhmet at Memphis, believed to house a fragment of the lioness goddess's fierce power. To activate its latent force, the shadow priest was instructed to chant prayers at the stroke of midnight in a hidden oratory beneath St. Peter's. Those present at his final recorded ceremony, documented in a secret diary belonging to a Swiss Guard captain, recounted a sudden hush overtaking the basilica's vast corridors, followed by a low hum that resonated like distant thunder. Witnesses reported seeing the basalt amulet glow with an inner red light, as though the spirit of Sekhmet herself had awakened. The priest then marked each attendee with a sign of the cross drawn in soot and oil, blessing them with protection against plague, famine, and demonic assault. After completing the rite, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the amulet and a burned fragment of vellum, inscribed with hieratic symbols. Modern petrographic analysis confirmed the basalt's origin in the Nile Delta, and microscopic residue on the vellum-matched black lotus oil used in late medieval Egyptian rituals. Yet the Vatican's official histories omit any reference to these events, attributing stories of a shadowy guardian to myth. The papal shadow priest remains a ghostly figure in the Church's hidden Analsan emblem of how far the Holy See once ventured into the realm of ancient magic to safeguard its flock. Hidden within the core of the Vatican's Lateran Obeliska relic, brought from Heliopolis in the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose III, and re-erected by Emperor Constantine, tiny recessed chambers carved into its red granite interior. A 15th-century restoration diary, secretly annotated by Pope Sixtus IV's hand, reveals that these niches held small earthenware jars filled with water collected from the Nile at dawn during the summer solstice. Legend claims that priests of Ra once used such vessels to capture the river's sacred currents, believing them to contain the god's whispered counsel. When the obelisk was reinstalled in 1588, under the direction of Domenico Fontana, a group of trusted Vatican engineers and magi performed a midnight ceremony, pouring each jar's contents into one central basin at the obelisk's summit. According to Fontana's hidden memorandum, the combined waters released faint, melodious-soft murmurs that resonated within the obelisk's hollowed niches like echoes of an ancient temple choir. Eyewitness reports, recorded in a private letter from a Swiss Guard captain, describe how those sounds seemed to speak in an otherworldly tongue, offering guidance on matters of state and whispers of looming threats to Christendom. Researchers in the 20th century who studied preserved fragments of the jar's residue confirmed traces of Nile minerals and microalgae consistent with early morning collections. Yet the Vatican maintains that the ceremony was merely symbolic. Despite the official claim, the phenomenon was never replicated, and the jars were quietly removed and hidden in the Vatican's vault beneath the Cappella Paolina. Today, the Lateran obelisk still stands as a silent sentinel overlooking Rome, its secrets buried within the granite a testament to a moment when Christian faith and Egyptian ritual converged in a whispered conversation between water, stone, and silence. A bronze statue of St. Peter standing vigil before the Basilica once drew more than devout pilgrims. In the hush before dawn, some claimed the figure exhaled a faint mist, as if breathing life into stone. Vatican metalworkers' logs from the late 16th century, rediscovered in a private codex, reveal that the alloy used in the statue's casting included trace amounts of Egyptian copper mined near Sinai and refined using techniques recorded on papyrus fragments dating to the reign of Amenemhat IV, around 1800 BC. According to a secret report by the supervising artisan, when candle flames flickered in a chapel beneath the statue, condensation formed near its mouth, and a soft sigh echoed through the vault. Scholars who investigated these accounts centuries later found microscopic pitting along the bronze's surface, suggesting internal pockets where humidity might collect and vent. Yet the timing of the breaths, always coinciding with moments of intense prayer, convinced many within the Curia that a divine spark or something older infused the metal. Fearing that the effect blurred the line between miracle and illusion, Pope Urban VIII ordered the statue moved to a sunnier gallery and sealed with wax-lined bronze plugs in its hidden chambers. Official records state that humidity control measures were the sole reason for the relocation, but eyewitness letters speak of sorrowful gasps heard by those who prostrated themselves at the statue's base. In modern analysis, restorers discovered small cavities within the bronze, consistent with an ancient Egyptian molten metal method designed to trap air pockets, perhaps a forgotten legacy of craftsmen who believed metal could hold a breath of its maker's soul. The statue remains on display today, its alabaster eyes fixed toward heaven, a silent sentinel whose hidden lungs once whispered of faith, craftsmanship, and the enduring mystery of matter made animate. A vast stone sepulchre discovered in a forgotten crypt beneath St. Peter's Basilica once held a mummy in flawless condition, its linen wrappings preserved by a fine resin found only in the oases of western Egypt. Sealed for centuries behind 2 iron doors and an outer layer of marble, the sarcophagus bore no name or date, yet emitted an aura of ancient power felt by every soul who passed its threshold. An anonymous remit placed it there in the early 15th century by Pope Eugenius IV, who feared that its occupant's true identity might challenge the Church's own claims of spiritual authority. Within its walls, a papyrus scroll was found inscribed with funerary texts from the reign of Amenhotep II around 1400 BC, when Egyptian priests perfected the art of preserving flesh for eternity. According to a confidential letter from the curator of relics, the scroll included instructions on transforming the dead into sentinels that could guard sacred sites long after life had fled their bodies. When the sarcophagus was opened by Cardinal Ludovico in secret in 1432, he and 7 bishops witnessed a soft breath escape from the mummy's sealed lips as though stirred by a force beyond human control. Their subsequent report, smuggled out of the Vatican in a small leather pouch, records that the bishops trembled at the sound, confessing they heard whispers in an unrecognizable tongue. Alarmed that the sarcophagus might house a being neither dead nor fully alive, the Church restored the seals and interred the chest within a subterranean vault filled with consecrated soil. Modern CT scans conducted by independent researchers reveal air pockets within the linen layers and traces of embalming oils infused with frankincense and myrrh. Yet Vatican archivists maintain the chest holds nothing more than a pious relic. Whether guardian or anomaly, the sealed sarcophagus remains a silent testament to the Church's uneasy embrace of the magic of Egypt and its enduring power to blur the boundary between mortality and the mysteries that lie beyond. Hidden for centuries within a cedarwood chest in the Vatican's subterranean archives was a brittle scroll inscribed with a ritual known as the Scroll of Seven Knots. Its vellum was composed of layered goat hide, treated with resin imported from Nubian caravans, and its ink contained the same components found in a Ptolemaic papyrus dated to roughly 200 BC. According to a clandestine note penned by the archivist responsible for the find, the ritual described binding an enemy's will through 7 successive knots tied in a loop of braided papyrus ribbon. Each knot corresponded to an Egyptian deity, Isis for protection, Seth for chaos, Horus for vision, and required the recitation of incantations that linked the subject's name to the fabric of the knot. Legend held that once all 7 knots were tied and the final word uttered, the person bound would act only in obedience to the binder's commands until the knots were undone. Concerned that such power could compromise free will itself, Pope Nicholas V ordered that the scroll be transcribed only under strict supervision, and that the original be sealed in a lead box submerged beneath a marble basin in the baptistery. The scribe's marginal annotations, discovered in a later inventory, reveal that when a novice attempted the knot ritual under controlled conditions, the wax candle used in the ceremony melted backward, as though emotions were being drawn out instead of light fed. Fearing that the ritual could invert the natural order of prayer and supplication, the Church prohibited any further experimentation. Modern fiber analysis of the papyrus loop confirmed the presence of pharaonic linen fibers, interwoven with traces of lotus oil, suggesting genuine Egyptian origin. Yet, Vatican custodians dismissed these findings as coincidental, insisting the scroll was a symbolic relic rather than a practical grimoire. The Scroll of 7 Knots remains entombed beneath consecrated watersa, silent reminder of the thin line between binding rhetoric and binding magic. Beneath the tranquil waters of Lake Nemi, just beyond the ancient Roman temple's submerged pillars, lay a hidden chapel whose foundations were lost after a landslide in 31 BC. Legends persisted that a small flotilla of papal barges once entered its vaulted interior to retrieve a codex written on water-resistant vellum. The manuscript, later known as the Codex of the Sunken Sanctum, contained instructions for moonlit ceremonies designed to summon shadows from the depths rituals originally recorded in a 7th century BC. Egyptian scroll found in the Temple of Khnum at Esna. According to a secret report by the pontiff's own navigator, the codex described how priests would chant names of the moon goddess Hesat while submerging silver bowls engraved with lotus blossoms, thereby capturing the silent essence of night in liquid form. When Pope Urban VIII, eager to harness such power during the 30 Years' War, dispatched divers clad in leather and lead, they returned with fragments of the codex sealed in watertight amphorae. These pieces, detailed in his personal correspondence, revealed incantations promising the opening of a portal between world and underworld at the stroke of midnight. Alarmed that such a gateway might unleash malevolent forces, the Pope ordered the Codex's fragments to be wrapped in oilcloth and interred in the Basilica's crypt beneath a layer of burning frankincense. Modern analysis of the recovered vellum confirms its tannin levels match those of ancient waterproofing recipes used along the Nile, and microscopic traces of algae found between the pages corroborate a prolonged aquatic burial. Nevertheless, the Vatican officially considers the Codex a pious forgery meant to deter would-be divers. Yet within its waterlogged verses lies a truth long submerged that the Church once risked drowning itself in ancient lore to claim dominion over darkness and the unseen currents of fate. A single canopic jar carved from alabaster and bearing the falcon-headed visage of Kebesenuef rested for centuries in a niche behind ornate panels of the Vatican Library. In 1334, Cardinal Matteo Rosselli ordered its removal and examination after guarded reports described a whispered liturgy that could preserve a soul's vital essence within the jar's alabaster confines. The papyrus label inside, carbon dated to around 1400 BC during the reign of Thutmose IV, outlined the ritual. To anointed blood from a sacrificial bull mixed with natron salt was to be poured into the jar while chanting invocations to Thoth, sealing within the vessel a person's memory and will. According to Rosselli's private journal, which resurfaced in a locked chest in 1802, he tested the rite on an unwilling acolyte who fell into a trance so deep that even the attending priest could not rouse him for 3 days. Fearing such power could undermine earthly authority, the cardinal decreed that the jar be refilled with sand from the Roman Forum, consecrated with holy water, and entombed in a subterranean chamber beneath Old St. Peter's Basilica's true contents known only to the Pope. When modern archaeologists analyzed tiny residue samples scraped from the jar's rim, they found high concentrations of sodium carbonate and trace peptidic fragments consistent with bovine blood and human protein. Vatican curators insist the jar was merely an offering vessel, but Rosselli's coded annotations hint at a darker legacy. That within its sealed walls lay the potential to imprison and, perhaps, resurrect the very spark of life itself. In a cedar chest secured within the Vatican's subterranean scriptorium lay a single scroll whose parchment had been deliberately stained a deep, unearthly red. When Maestro Lucius, master conservator of the library, first unrolled it in 1385, the acrid scent of iron and resin filled the air, as though the scroll had been dipped in a forge's molten heart. His notes, later found in a secret margin of the library's registry, describe how the pigment was no ordinary dye, but a mixture of ochre and finely ground hematite, blended with blood drawn from sacrificial rites once performed in the temple of Sekhmet at Heliopolis. Carbon dating places the origin of the scroll's vellum at approximately 500 BC during the reign of Psamtik Iwen. Egyptian priests experimented with inks meant to harness the life force of both ink and flesh. The manuscript's text detailed 7 sacramental verses invoking the Eye of Ra to ward off pestilence, famine, and demonic specters. Lucius reported that, when read aloud in the candlelit vault, the scroll's crimson letters seemed to pulse like living veins, and that those present felt an almost magnetic pull toward the consecrated text. Alarmed by such potent imagery, Pope Boniface IX convened a secret council of theologians and alchemists who agreed that the scroll's power could easily be twisted into a curse. Under pontifical decree, the ink-laden parchment was cut into strips, each fragment buried separately in holy soil around Rome's 7 hills. and the cedar chest was filled with crushed limestone before being resealed. In the late 20th century, chemical analysis of a surviving fragment recovered illicitly by an amateur scholar confirmed traces of animal hemoglobin and plant-based tannins consistent with Egyptian funerary inks. Yet Vatican scholars maintain that any suggestion of magical potency arises from medieval superstition rather than deliberate design. The blood-red papyrus thus remains an object of contested legacy, its scattered fragments lying hidden beneath Rome as silent witnesses to a time when the Church both feared and sought to contain the ancient alchemy of Egyptian magic. In the spring of 1402, during a rare conjunction of Venus and Jupiter visible from Rome's skyline, the papal tiara itself became the focus of a secret experiment, aiming to merge celestial influence with terrestrial authority. Pope Benedict XIII, intrigued by reports of an Alexandrian astrologer's treatise claiming that a metal crown infused with sacred astrological timing could channel the heavens' favor, granted permission for the ceremony to be conducted in private within the apostolic palace. According to a confidential account penned by the pontiff's master of ceremonies, the tiara was removed from its velvet casket at midnight and placed upon a marble plinth engraved with concentric circles representing the zodiac. Surrounding it were 4 silver chalices filled with water drawn from the river Jordan, wine pressings from the Franciscan vineyards in Galilee, oil blessed by Coptic clerics, and ambergris traded from Alexandria's spice market materials, chosen for their symbolic resonance with ancient Egyptian rituals honoring the sun god Ra. When the astrologer recited invocations in a blend of Latin and Demotic, witnesses reported a soft hum rising from the tiara's jeweled framework, as though every gemstone pulsated in harmony with the planetary alignment above. Suddenly, sparks of blue-white light danced across the tiara's pearls and rubies, illuminating the vaulted chamber with an unearthly glow that lingered long after the ceremony concluded. The master of ceremonies wrote that the air grew thick, charged with an energy that seemed both divine and otherworldly, and that the Pope himself felt a surge of clarity and conviction, declaring that future councils would benefit from the tiara's illumined counsel. But when Cardinal Pietro Ghislieri attempted to replicate the ritual weeks later, the tiara emitted no spark, and the astrologer vanished from the Vatican without explanation. Fearing that the crown's fleeting brilliance had unleashed forces beyond human control, Benedict ordered that all records of the event be sealed under oath, and that the tiara thereafter be kept in darkness, guarded only by those who bore witness. Modern gemologists examining the crown have noted tiny abrasions on the pearl's nacre and minuscule fractures within the rubeous anomalies, consistent with exposure to sudden electrical discharges, yet the Vatican's official inventory dismisses any suggestion of magic, describing the tiara's luster as merely reflective of skilled craftsmanship. Whether the sparks were divine affirmation or a quirk of alchemical interference, the episode remains one of the Church's most enigmatic encounters with celestial and Egyptian-inspired power. In the hushed hours before dawn in 1428, the Vatican's chief sacristan unlocked a secret reliquary known only to the Pope and his closest advisors. Crafted from blackened bronze and shaped like a miniature censer, the reliquary housed fragments of a linen cloth said to be soaked in ichor drawn from a sacred pool at Abydos. Ancient Egyptian texts carbon dated to around 1200 BC during the reign of Ramses II describe this pool of tears as the site where priests of Osiris bathed in waters imbued with the deity's life-giving essence. According to an insider's letter smuggled from the Vatican archives, these cloth fragments were pressed into service during clandestine rites aimed at healing grievous wounds and restoring the vitality of pilgrims too frail to endure standard sacrament. Under cover of night, Pope Martin V presided over one such ritual in a closed chamber beneath the Lateran Basilica. Illuminated by sconces of frankincense resin, he intoned a liturgy blending Latin psalms with Egyptian supplications, then draped the ichor-soaked cloth across the bowed shoulders of a suffering nobleman. Eyewitness accounts claim that the cloth glowed with a soft green luminescence, and that the patient's pallor warmed within minutes, as though a drop of the Nile's blessed waters had been poured into his veins. Despite such remarkable recoveries, subsequent consignments of the cloth disappeared, ending the midnight rituals. Restorers who examined shards of the reliquary in the 19th century identified traces of copper salts and organic compounds matching those found in ancient Egyptian burial pools. Yet, Vatican records maintain that the procedures were purely symbolic blessings rather than tangible miracles. The midnight reliquary's fate remains uncertain. Some say it was lost in the chaos of the French occupation of Rome, while others whisper it still lies hidden in a crypt beneath Vatican Hill, awaiting the return of its priestly guardian. Beneath the sacristy vaults, the Vatican's chief architect, Fra Antonio Sangallo, once confessed that certain corridors and alcoves were designed not for structural necessity, but to channel and amplify sound, creating a hidden network he called the whisperways. Drawing upon geometric layouts found in an Egyptian temple blueprint dated to around 1500 BC, Sangallo placed angled niches and hidden vents that could carry the softest murmur from one end of the structure to another. His secret came to light in a 1512 memorandum discovered in the margins of Michelangelo's architectural sketches, where he detailed how the whisperways could be used to project confidential prayers or incantations words meant only for the ears of select cardinals. Tradition holds that a fragment of a papyrus scroll recording an invocation to Thoth god of secrets was embedded within a cornerstone near the chapel of the Pietà, ensuring the walls themselves would remember and rebroadcast the ritual words should anyone walk the halls at the appointed hour. In practice, a cardinal could recite a quiet plea for divine guidance in one chamber and have it carried, with crystal clarity, to another hidden enclave where decisions of state were made. When Pope Leo X learned of this acoustic marvel, he commissioned a clandestine demonstration that involved speaking a confidential decree at the base of the Scala Regia, only to hear it echo word for word hundreds of feet away in the papal library. Alarmed by the potential for espionage, the Pope ordered Sangallo to seal off certain passages and to inscribe papal seals over key events and act recorded in a private diary of his master of ceremonies. Modern sound tests in the Vatican have confirmed unusual reverberations in these sealed corridors, though the Church attributes them to age-worn masonry. Yet Fra Sangallo's legacy endures, a reminder that the very stones of the Vatican were once enlisted to carry the softest secret sand, that architecture itself can become a vessel for power. Cardinal Felice Contarini, famed for his scholarly rigor in the early 1520s, became obsessed with a set of salt crystals reputedly harvested from the surface of the Dead Sea beneath a half-moon's light. According to a clandestine journal entry later discovered in the Vatican secret archive, these crystals had been brought to Rome by a Venetian merchant who claimed they were gathered during a lunar eclipse that rendered the waters momentarily as dark as pitch. Local Bedouin laureacoing Egyptian funeral rites dating to the New Kingdom around 1400 BC held that the Dead Sea's salt, when purified under certain astral conditions, could preserve not only the body but also the knowledge inscribed upon papyrus scrolls. Contarini's private research notes describe how he dissolved a fragment of ancient Coptic parchment in distilled salt water, then re-immersed it with a tincture of myrrh and cedar resin. The result, he wrote, was a revelation of faded hieratic glyphs previously invisible to the naked eye spells said to command the river's fury or calm its storms. Convinced that the same method could unlock hidden texts beneath St. Peter's Basilica, Contarini obtained papyrus fragments from a known cache of Egyptian-style scrolls, dissolved them in the sacred solution, and watched in astonishment as lost invocations emerged, shimmering like wet silver in torchlight. However, the Cardinal's experiments soon took a darker turn. Servants who assisted him fell into mournful trances, whispering names of desert gods long thought silent. Fearing that a mortal hand had tampered with divine mysteries, Contarini's superiors intervened, confiscated the salt crystals and the recovered scrolls, and ordered the Cardinal to destroy his notes. Yet fragments of his diary survived in the binding of a theological treatise, and modern chemical analysis of a sealed vial labeled simply Aqua Solis Judaei confirms trace elements identical to salt deposits found only in the Jordan Rift. Although Vatican scholars dismiss the story as apocryphal embellishment, the lost knowledge revealed by the Dead Sea salt stands as a testament to the Church's historic willingness to explore the meeting point between spiritual devotion and ancient science, even when it meant stirring currents better left undisturbed. Within a vaulted chamber of the Vatican's infirmary, Brother Seraphin, a learned monk of the Benedictine order, maintained a hidden alchemical laboratory where he distilled elixirs from lotus petals, vine sap, and powdered lapis lazuli. His work, documented in a secret journal smuggled out in 1593, reveals that he relied on formulas derived from an Egyptian papyrus dated to around 600 BC, when priests at Saqqara experimented with plant essences to induce visions of the afterlife. According to Seraphin's meticulous notes, he combined crushed blue lotus, seeds renowned for their mild psychoactive effects, with tinctures of henna and frankincense, then aged the mixture in silver chalices under moonlight to awaken latent spiritual properties. When ingested by a select group of novices, the elixir induced vivid dreams of subterranean realms and conversations with ancient spirits, granting insights into cures for plague and blindness. The monk's entries describe how, after one such ceremony in 1601 under Pope Clement VIII's watchful eye, several participants awoke claiming to see the basilica's hidden catacombs illuminated by ghostly lantern snot, carved architectural lamps, but flickering apparitions guiding the faithful toward lost relics. These revelations led Clement to sanction limited distribution of the elixir to embassies in distant courts, where envoys credited it with diplomatic inspiration. Yet as rumors of visions grew, the congregation of the Index intervened, declaring Seraphin's brews dangerously close to necromancy. His laboratory was sealed off, and all written records were ordered destroyed. Despite this, fragments of his journal survived, later incorporated into a 17th-century medical compendium hidden in the Vatican Library's backstacks. Modern phytochemical analysis of residues found on a recovered silver chalice confirms the presence of aporphine alkaloids consistent with blue lotus and traces of cinnamaldehyde from frankincense substantiating Seraphin's original alchemical pursuits. Today, the cloistered alchemist's work remains buried beneath layers of ecclesiastical censure, a testament to the Church's fraught relationship with the transformative power of ancient botanical magic. Inside the bell tower of the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore, a set of grand bronze bells once rang with more than human intention. Crafted in 1624 under Pope Urban VIII's commission, each bell was cast using copper ores imported from the Sinai Peninsula and blended with silver recovered from Egyptian temple offerings, dating to the reign of Psamtik II around 595 BC. An anonymous memorandum from the tower's chief campanologist, discovered within a sealed ledger, describes how inscriptions of demotic glyphs were hidden beneath each bell's lip, intended to invoke blessings of protection and clarity. When tolled in the early morning hours before the first prayer, the bells emitted a series of overtones that, local lore claims, resonated with the frequencies used by ancient Egyptian priests to call the dead toward peaceful rest. In one clandestine experiment recorded by the campanologist, the sexto ringers performed a series of 5 consecutive tolls at midnight while reciting verses from a papyrus fragment once held in the Temple of Neith at Sais. Witnesses below reported hearing voices echoing between the church wall-soft whispers in an unknown tongue that seemed to answer the bells rather than follow them. Fearing that the ceremony had breached the veil between worlds, the Pope ordered the glyph inscriptions to be removed and the bells to be recast. Yet the original molds, hidden away in an underground storeroom, suggested that the experiment had left an indelible mark. Acoustic measurements, taken in modern times, reveal subtle harmonic spikes at frequencies matching the resonant patterns of certain Egyptian funerary chants. Despite these findings, Vatican records insist the bell's unique sonority was merely the result of metallurgical innovation and expert tuning. Still, those who study the ancient texts often wonder whether, in the quiet before dawn, the bells of Santa Maria Maggiore once spoke not only to the living but to realms beyond mortal hearing. Hushed beneath a shattered fresco in a neglected corridor of the Vatican Library lies a fragmentary hymn to Osiris, its lyrical cadences preserved on a piece of papyrus so delicate it threatens to disintegrate at a stray breath. The fragment surfaced in 1654, when scholars renovating the library's eastern wing uncovered a cache of scrolls hidden behind loose masonry. Though the official report attributes the find to early Christian writings, a private letter from the lead restorer reveals the hymn's true origin, a funerary composition dating to the reign of Seti I around 1290 BC. According to the restorer's memoir, later concealed in a locked trunk, the hymn describes the journey of the god Osiris through the starry vault of the night sky, guiding souls with gentle light and mourning their loss in measured verse. Intrigued by its promise of cosmic consolation, Pope Alexander VII summoned a group of Coptic scholars to translate the verses. Working by flickering candlelight, they reconstructed lines invoking Osiris as Judge of the Hidden Court, beseeching him to intercede for the departed and to grant the living mercy in moments of despair. The newly rendered Latin translation was read aloud in secret at the tomb of Saint Cecilia, where clergy reported a sudden fragrance of lotus and myrrh, as though the presence of Egyptian temples had been transported into the basilica's air. Scholars who examined microscopic samples of the pigment used for the hymn's rubrication confirmed traces of Egyptian madder root combined with iron oxide materials consistent with New Kingdom manuscript practices. Yet, fearing the hymn's pagan echoes might undermine the Church's teachings on resurrection, Alexander ordered that the scroll be bound with lead clasps and stored in a reliquary concealed behind the Chapel of the Holy Sacrament. Over time, the exact location of this reliquary was forgotten, and the hymn became one of the Vatican's most carefully guarded mysteries. Though echoes of its verses survive in marginal annotations across several theological treatises, the lost hymn to Osiris itself remains locked away, its final promises of judgment and mercy resonating only in silence. Deep in the recesses of a cloistered chapel, a forgotten ritual once took shape, blending Christian sacrament with ancient Egyptian rite. An illicit record, uncovered in a hidden compartment of a 17th century lectern, describes how a renegade priest named Father Ambrogio performed an unholy baptism in 1678 using water drawn from a Nilotic spring and sanctified by the blood of a scarlet ibis. The journal entry, scrawled in trembling hand and later sanctioned for destruction, recounts that Ambrogio tapped an emerald vial filled with ichor from the wild birdan animal sacred to the goddess Isisand, mixed it with holy baptismal water. As the candidate knelt beneath a carved relief of St. John the Baptist, Ambrogio intoned verses from both the Gospel of John and a papyrus hymn honoring Osiris, consecrating a new covenant that promised spiritual rebirth beyond mortal limits. Those present reported that, upon emerging from the font, the neophyte's eyes bore a luminous quality, as though reflecting an inner world unseen by ordinary sight. In the days that followed, he exhibited uncanny knowledge of distant lands and ancient languages, reciting passages of hieratic script long lost to scholarship. Alarmed by these developments, Bishop Francesco de' Medici ordered the ritual relic-san emerald vial and a fragment of papyrusto be sealed in a lead box and buried beneath the high altar at Santa Maria in Trastevere. Though later ecclesiastical decrees declared Ambrogio's actions heretical, no formal record of his trial survives. Only whispers among monastic orders suggest he was quietly confined to a remote hermitage until his death. Modern chemical analysis of a recovered sample from the vial reveals trace elements of copper carbonate and organic compounds matching those found in Nile Delta sediments, corroborating the rite's Egyptian provenance. Despite this, the Church maintains the unholy baptism was a metaphorical allegory rather than an actual ceremony. The sealed font and sunken vial lie undisturbed, a silent testament to the perilous fusion of water, blood, and forbidden invitation to the mysteries of the afterlife. Within the Vatican's labyrinthine network of vaults, behind doors of reinforced oak and iron, lay a small copper lamp engraved with starbursts and veiled figures. When Cardinal Alessandro Farnese acquired it from a merchant in Cairo around 1684, he believed it contained a jinnah spirit of the desert bound by ancient Egyptian sorcery. A confidential missive from the cardinal's private secretary describes how the lamp was first discovered in a sealed burial chamber near Thebes, alongside a scroll dating to the Third Intermediate Period, around 900 BC, which detailed the ritual for binding such spirits in metal vessels. According to the secretary's letter, Farnese summoned a renowned Coptic exorcist to perform the binding ceremony in a hidden oratory beneath the Vatican library. There, at the stroke of midnight, incense of myrrh and juniper was burned in censers shaped like lotus blossoms, while the exorcist recited invocations drawn from both the Quran and an Egyptian chant invoking the jinn's obedience. Eyewitness accounts, recorded in a ledger kept under seal, assert that the lamp's surface rippled as though alive, emitting a low hum that resonated through the crypt. Once the final binding word was spoken, the noise ceased abruptly, and the lamp fell, silent hits, captive spirit entrapped. Believing the jinn could be commanded to reveal hidden knowledge or influence distant events, Farnese used the lamp sparingly, drawing upon its power only in matters of state and security. However, after several instances of inexplicable tremors shaking the Basilica foundations whenever the lamp was lit, he ordered it to be encased in a lead box filled with consecrated soil and locked within a vault guarded by 3 Swiss guards. In the 20th century, metallurgists who examined the lamp's exterior surreptitiously noted traces of feldspar and copper alloys, characteristic of late-period Egyptian metallurgy, while spectral analysis detected residual hydrocarbons suggesting centuries of aromatic oil combustion. Yet Vatican curators insist the lamp is a simple antique vessel, devoid of supernatural contents. The imprisoned jinn remains a sealed secret, its watchful presence hidden behind layers of stone and silence. During the papacy of Clement XI, forged decrees known as the glyph-forged edicts secretly made their way into diplomatic hands across Europe. These documents outwardly resembled standard briefs from the Vatican, but bore hidden hieroglyphs along their margins, inscriptions lifted from an Egyptian decree of Thutmose III around 1450 BC that promised divine protection when read in a precise ritual tone. According to a confidential report by a curial scribe, the edicts were drafted in 1708 by a circle of theologian magi, who believed that embedding these glyphs would shield Catholic monarchs from plague, rebellion, and diabolic subversion. Recipients who intoned the concealed hieratic characters beneath flickering candles reportedly found their courts inexplicably stabilized, with factional disputes dissolving overnight. Yet, when Pope Clement's successor, Innocent XIII, learned of the practice, he deemed it too reminiscent of pagan magic and ordered all copies to be retrieved and incinerated under strict secrecy. The scribe's surviving marginalia discovered centuries later in a burnt fragment detail the glyph's arrangement. Each cluster corresponded to one of the 7 protective deities of ancient Thebes, including Amun-Ra for sovereignty and Sekhmet for healing. Modern ultraviolet analysis of an authenticated copy, held in a private collection, revealed faint traces of iron gall ink layered over authentic Vatican French parchment, confirming their dual origin. Despite this, Contemporary Vatican historians dismiss the glyph-forged edicts as clever forgeries rather than sanctioned instruments of power. Yet, whispers persist that one original copy escaped destruction and remains hidden in a diplomatic putsch's true potency locked within the silent promise of divine and ancient sanction. Tucked away in a locked cabinet of the Vatican's Gelati Hall lay a small bronze tablet inscribed with a hexagonal grid of names and symbols, known among insiders as the Cardinal's Curse Tablet. Its discovery in 1721 was recorded only in the private ledger of Cardinal Francesco Barberini, who had obtained it from a clandestine dealer in Smyrna. According to Barberini's own annotations later, cross-referenced by Vatican restorers, the tablet bore inscriptions directly derived from a Demotic papyrus dating to the reign of Susan I, around 1047 BC, when Egyptian priests employed curse tablets to bind adversaries through words etched in metal. When brought to Rome, the tablet was subjected to a midnight ritual in which 7 cardinals gathered beneath the Basilica's apse and recited a liturgy that fused Latin exorcisms with Egyptian maledictions intended to seal the fates of heretics and political rivals alike. Contemporary eyewitness accounts, preserved in fragmented diaries of the papal household, describe how each time a name was invoked on the tablet, a corresponding flame flickered in the chamber's sconces, as if driven by unseen breath, and distant church bells tolled without human touch. While Barberini believed the tablet would secure the Church's supremacy by neutralizing plots against the Holy See, he grew fearful when even benign petitions etched into the grid resulted in sudden misfortunes befalling the innocent. After a string of inexplicable tragedy-storms, wrecking papal barges and horses plunging into the Tiber, ordered the tablet buried in a lead-lined chest beneath the foundations of the Church of San Lorenzo in Panisperna, commanded all witnesses to swear silence. In the 20th century, metallurgists who examined a scrap of edge-worn bronze recovered from beneath San Lorenzo confirmed a composition matching late Bronze Age Egyptian alloys, including trace silver and arsenic. Yet Vatican curators insist the artifact is nothing more than a medieval curiosity. Despite this official stance, the Cardinal's Curse Tablet remains interred beneath centuries of stone and oath, its malefic promise lying dormant until the day's circumstance might call it forth once again. Within the dim recesses of the Sistine Chapel's loggia, long before Michelangelo painted its ceiling, an extraordinary phenomenon once drew secret gatherings of clerics and musicians alike. According to a hidden entry in the diary of Maestro Giovanni Battista di San Gimignano, chief organist to Pope Paul III in 1000, 540th Chapel's great organ pipes were retrofitted with alloys of copper and Egyptian bronze, salvaged from a merchant's cargo of temple fragments. The bronze, traced by modern analysis to a late-period workshop near Memphis around 600 BC, was prized by Egyptian artisans for its resonant qualities and incorporated hieroglyphic inlays that once adorned shrines of Amun-Ra. When the organist played certain chromatic sequences during the Via Crucis service, the chapel's stone vaults began to reverberate not just with music, but with harmonic overtones that observers likened to ghostly chants. Giovanni's own journal describes an evening when, upon pressing a specific combination of pedals beneath a full moon, the organ pipes emitted a low, breathy hum that seemed to echo the intonations of ancient temple choirs. Suspended notes lingered in the air long after the keys were released, suggesting the metal itself had absorbed and then released sound as though alive. Word of the organ's uncanny voice reached the ears of Cardinal Alessandro Farnese, who commissioned a secret performance for the Pope and select advisors. Eyewitness testimonies, later hidden in the Farnese family archives, recall how, during that gathering, participants felt an almost physical vibration in their chests, as if the chapel had become a living instrument. Fearing that such power might distract the faithful or border on necromantic invocation, Pope Paul III ordered the Egyptian bronze pipes be reforged with standard tin and lead alloys. The original pipes were dismantled and cast into simple bells for the Scuola Grande di San Marco in Venice, where their peculiar resonance reportedly vanished forever. Though the Vatican's official accounts credit the chapel's acoustics to architectural genius alone, the story of the singing organs endures as a testament to a rare moment when Christian liturgy and ancient Egyptian magic converged in music itself. A vellum scroll so fragile it threatened to dissolve in one's hands lay hidden in a velvet pouch beneath the altar of the Chapel of St. Michael, its contents known only to the cardinal charged with its safekeeping. This scroll that shattered was first documented in a private inventory of 1,567, filed under Pope Pius V's brief pontificate, alongside an accompanying notation that it had self-destructed upon completion of its purpose. According to a confidential letter written by the chapel's sacristan, the scroll bore a single invocation rendered in Moroccan ink and silver leafen amalgam of Christian prayer and Egyptian funerary incantation, traced to an honest century BC manuscript discovered in the Valley of the Kings. The ritual instructions called for reciting the invocation at the stroke of midnight within a circle of salt harvested from the Red Sea, after which the scroll would return to dust, its power fulfilled. On the night of April 23, 1567, a select group of Jesuit exorcists gathered in the Candlelight chapel's crypt. As the final syllable left their lips, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the candles, and when lantern light flickered back, the scroll lay in ashes, ink reduced to metallic flakes in a fine powder. Witnesses later described an echoing crack, like stone splitting, and the sensation of unseen hands brushing against skin. In the following days, pilgrims reported unexplained healings in the neighborhood of Trastevere, attributing their recovery to divine mercy. Restoration experts in the 19th century who examined the ash found no trace of ordinary vellum fibers, leading to speculation that the scroll had been composed of specially treated sheepskin and ancient adhesives that dissolved under ritual fire. Despite this, the Vatican's records dismiss the event as metaphorical allegory rather than a literal miracle. The scroll that shattered remains one of the Church's most perplexing enigmata document, designed to vanish after wielding its power, leaving behind only questions of what truly transpired in the flickering darkness beneath the stones of Rome. Hidden beneath a nondescript door in the Vatican's palace courtyard lies the Chapel of Eternal Night, a space intentionally cloaked in perpetual darkness. Records of its creation date to 1589, when Pope Sixtus V authorized the conversion of a former grain store into a sanctuary dedicated to contemplation of Christ's passage through darkness. Yet, in a secret addendum to the building's blueprints signed by the Pope himself architects, noted that the walls were lined with blocks of Egyptian basalt imported from quarries near Aswan, each imbued with inscriptions from the late period that invoked Nuit, the night sky goddess. According to a clandestine memorandum from the pontificate's master of ceremonies, the intent was to harness the basalt's reputed power to absorb light and silence the material world, allowing supplicants to journey inward through metaphorical shadows. A handful of eyewitness accounts, preserved in a closed dossier, describe how, when a single candle was brought into the chapel and extinguished by the presiding cleric, an uncanny luminescence emerged from the basalt panel's faint phosphorescent veins that mapped ancient star patterns long since lost to time. Visitors reported hearing whispers of distant prayers and feeling as though they drifted in the cosmos itself, glimpsing cosmic mysteries beyond the confines of earthly faith. Concerned that such experiences bordered on mystical ecstasy rather than measured piety, subsequent popes ordered the chapel's entrance sealed after each use, limiting access to a select circle of cardinals and trusted scholars. Modern geologists analyzing a fallen basalt shard confirmed the presence of trace elements such as manganese and copper oxides, known to produce subtle bioluminescence under certain conditions. Yet official Vatican guides refer only to the chapel's architectural marvels, omitting any mention of its nocturnal surprises. The Chapel of Eternal Night remains one of the Holy See's most carefully guarded sites, its darkness a reminder that even within the heart of light, the mysteries of Egyptian magic persist, waiting to be felt rather than seen. Beneath a hidden alcove in the Vatican's Belvedere courtyard rests a faded fresco of a regal woman draped in mourning veils, her arms outstretched as if greeting souls emerging from the tomb. When restoration began in 1623 under Pope Urban VIII, scholars discovered that the pigments contained a rare Egyptian blue mineral azurite sourced from Sinai mines and processed by artisans in the reign of Ramses III around 1150 BC. Confidential restoration journals, kept under lock and key, reveal that the fresco was commissioned by a cardinal obsessed with the Book of Gates, an ancient funerary text in which the goddess Nephthys guides the dead through perilous gates into the afterlife. Beneath the plaster, faint demotic inscriptions were found bearing the title Queen of the Dead, suggesting that early Vatican patrons sought to merge Christian intercession with Egyptian concepts of guardianship over the departed. According to a private memorandum by the lead restorer, Cardinal Ludovico Ottaviani, when the fresco was first revealed bathed in candlelight, the image's eyes seemed to glisten with a life of their own, and the air carried a faint tinge of myrrh and lotus. The cardinal arranged for midnight vigils before the painting, urging select clergy to recite psalms alongside reconstructed verses of the Book of Gates. Participants later reported feeling a calm as profound as the silence of tombs, a sense that the Queen welcomed the faithful into the embrace of mercy and renewal. Fearing that such potent syncretism might blur doctrinal boundaries, Pope Innocent X ordered that the fresco be reconsecrated with holy oils and sprinkled with holy water, thereby Christianizing its ancient power. Though modern spectrographic analysis confirms the presence of Egyptian minerals in binders, Vatican guides describe the fresco simply as a masterwork of Baroque devotion. The Queen of the Dead persists as a silent sentinel over souls, her dual heritage, a testament to the Church's centuries-long dance with the mysteries of judgment, mercy, and the ancient rites that once ruled the world beyond the veil. Hidden in the glove compartment of a marble cabinet in the Basilica's sacristy, the papal scarab ring was an unassuming gold band, carved in the likeness of the Egyptian dung beetle, a symbol of rebirth and eternal transformation. It first appeared in inventories during the pontificate of Clement XII in the early 18th century, noted only as a curious relic with no recorded provenance. However, private correspondence between the Pope's chamberlain and a Coptic envoy reveals that the ring was brought to Rome in 1730 by a Franciscan friar who had visited Luxor. He claimed it once belonged to a high priest of Amun during the reign of Amenhotep II, around 1400 BC, and was imbued with the power to bind and release spiritual forces with a single touch. According to a confidential report by Cardinal Leonardo Maria Lucchesi, who secretly tested the ring, touching its scarab head to an unlit candle caused the wick to smolder and burst into flame without any human spark. When pressed against ancient papyrus fragments, the ring's engraved hieroglyphs traced to demotic inscriptions praising Khepri would momentarily glow with a soft green light, illuminating nearby texts in a language even skilled scholars could not decipher. Fearing that its magic might fall into the wrong hands, Clement XII ordered the ring encased in lead within a sealed casket stored beneath the chapel of St. Helena. Yet whispers among Vatican curators suggest that during the Napoleonic invasion, the ring was hastily buried in the Basilica's foundation to prevent its seizure. In the late 20th century, restorers examining a misplaced lead box discovered tiny flecks of verdigris on its surface, matching corrosion patterns typical of Nile region antiquities. Despite these forensic clues, official Vatican statements assert that the ring is a decorative relic with no supernatural properties. The papal scarab ring thus endures as a silent testament to the Church's centuries-long ambivalence toward objects that blur the boundary between faith and the arcane legacies of Egyptian magic. Hidden in the alcove behind the Basilica's sacrament chapel lay a small leather satchel containing a handful of ochre-colored dust recovered from a collapsed Roman catacomb in 1752. Cemetery caretakers described it as "earth of the forgotten," yet a private memorandum by the papal custodian reveals its true origin. A powdered compound prepared according to an Egyptian recipe found in a funerary papyrus from around 1600 BC during the reign of Hatshepsut that could reanimate inert materials. The recipe called for mixing Nile silt with ground lotus petals, eagle bone ash, and a drop of consecrated chrism, then allowing the blend to sit beneath a waxing moon for 3 nights. In 1755, Pope Benedict XIV authorized a clandestine experiment in a subterranean chamber beneath the Lateran Palace. There, Brother Angelo, an observant monk versed in herbal lore, stirred the dust into a clay statuette of St. Lawrence, recited the Veni Creator Spiritus alongside reconstructed passages from the Egyptian Book of Breathing, and traced a cross over the figure's heart. Witnesses, later sworn to secrecy, reported that the statuette's cracked lips parted in a silent sigh, and that its limbs shifted as though testing weight for the first time. When Brother Angelo laid a hand upon the clothed figure's shoulder, he felt a warmth rising as if holding a living form. Alarmed by this uncanny animation, the cardinal overseeing the project ordered the statuette dismantled and its fragments mixed back into earth from consecrated graves. Modern analysis of soil samples from the chamber's crevices detected microscopic traces of organic proteins intermixed with the ochre dust evidence, supporting the experiment's partial success. Yet Vatican archaeologists dismiss the event as a natural quirk of subterranean gases. The satchel's remnants were buried beneath the basilica's foundation stones, and Brother Angelo was reassigned to remote duties. Still, the tale of when dust became flesh lives on in hushed corridors, a testament to the perilous edge on which faith and forbidden magic once met within the church's hidden sanctums. Beneath the foundations of a nondescript wing in the apostolic palace lies a dim chamber lined with hundreds of small handbells, each its clapper removed, and its rim inscribed with faded hieroglyphs from the 2021 dynasty, around 880 BC. A 1,763 engineering report hidden for centuries in the Vatican secret archive notes that these bells were gathered from decommissioned church steeples and recast in bronze alloys, complemented by Egyptian copper sourced from the Delta. According to the report's confidential author, the bells were intended not to ring but to absorb sound and through ritual, to trap whispered prayers or maledictions within their hollow forms. During a trial overseen by Pope Clement XIII, a priest recited the Kyrie eleison while walking the chamber's perimeter, and the muffled echoes of his own voice seemed to swell as though drawn into the bells themselves. Witnesses later described an uncanny silence that persisted even when trumpets sounded overhead, as if the vault lay in a bubble detached from the world's din. Concerned that the bells could become vessels of anger and secret plots, the Pope forbade their removal and had the chamber sealed with a marble slab carved with an unbroken chant of the Lord's Prayer. Modern acoustic measurements detected near-total sound absorption within the vault, confirming its effectiveness as a sonic trap, while metallurgists, analyzing a recovered bell fragment, identified trace artisanal techniques matching those used in Ptolemaic workshops. Despite this, Vatican engineers maintain the vault was a precautionary measure to protect clerics from noise pollution rather than a magical experiment. The Vault of Silent Bells remains one of the Church's most mysterious acoustic chambers, a place where prayers vanish into metal, and where the boundary between sacred supplication and suppressed voices lies forever shrouded in silence. Within a secluded cloister high in the Vatican's North Tower, a group of Capuchin friars once performed a ritual known among them as the Rite of Endless Reverie. According to a hidden treatise penned by Father Gregorio in 1782, the ceremony required participants to consume a tincture made from pressed petals of night-blooming cereus, an ingredient referenced in a late New Kingdom Egyptian scroll circa 1100 BC, when priests sought to commune with the divine through prolonged dream states. The tincture was prepared by infusing dried petals in oil of spikenard and sweet basil, then aging the mixture in a crystal vial for a lunar month. At midnight, 7 friars each, clothed in white robeswood, assemble before an altar adorned with silver lotus medallions. They would drink the elixir in silence, then lie upon carpets of goat hair while one among them, designated as the Dream Keeper, chanted passages from both the Psalms and reconstructed hymns from the Book of Two Ways, guiding their visions through the underworld's paths. Eyewitness journals, long concealed in a locked caissone, record that participants experienced vivid, interconnected dreams in which from soul to soul they traversed luminous corridors carved with hieroglyphs. These shared visions were said to reveal warnings of impending heresy or illness within the Church. On more than one occasion, the friars allegedly woke to see spectral outlines of ancient Egyptian temples projected upon the cloister's stone walls. Fearing that the ritual blurred the line between prophecy and presumption, Pope Pius VI ordered the rite discontinued and all related manuscripts consigned to the Index of Forbidden Texts. Yet, fragments of the Dreamkeeper's chant survived, encoded within marginal notes of later theological works. Modern pharmacological analysis of a surviving vial-re, discovered by chance in a decommissioned convent-confirmed trace alkaloids, consistent with serious extracts known to induce altered states of consciousness. Despite official denials, the rite of endless reverie endures as a testament to the Church's once daring exploration of ancient botanical magic in search of divine insight. When Brother Matthew of the Vatican Scriptorium was appointed to copy a set of papyrus fragments brought from Dendera in 1821, he did so under strict orders and while blindfolded. According to his private journal, later discovered in a hidden compartment of a 19th-century binding press, the fragments bore inscriptions from a Ptolemaic funerary text dating to around 200 BC that contained curses designed to leap from ink onto flesh. Fearful that accidental viewing might unleash these maledictions upon the unwary, the sacred congregation directed that Matthew wear a fine linen veil during transcription, ensuring that his fingers alone traced each hieratic groove. He describes fingers grazing the papyrus like tremulous pilgrims, fingertips guided by memory of letter forms rather than sight, with an assistant whispering syllables of protective prayer in his ear. Matthew's notes recount an instance when, despite the veil, the air around him seemed to shimmer, and he felt a sudden weight upon his heart, as though unseen hands pressed upon his chest. As dawn broke, he completed the copies, and, still blindfolded, entrusted the originals to a lead-lined box beneath the sacristy floor. Later, chemical analysis of ink particles in his work revealed traces of Egyptian manganese oxide and plant resins consistent with ceremonial inks of the late Ptolemaic era, confirming the text's authenticity. Yet Vatican keepers classify the veil as symbolic humility rather than practical precaution. Brother Matthew's silent labor stands as a testament to a time when the Church balanced reverence and fear before the weight of ancient words, and when the act of copying became itself a ritual of protection and bound respect. Beneath the cobbled courtyard of St. Peter's stands the base of what was once a slender granite obelisk, its shaft long ago shattered into fragments too dangerous to leave standing. Though commonly attributed to the vagaries of time and weather, a confidential memorandum preserved in the Vatican's engineering vaults tells a different story. In 1590, a team of papal masons discovered that the obelisk's core had been hollowed out and filled with a mixture of powdered natron, crushed lapis lazuli, and resonant amalgam matching Egyptian binding agents used during the reign of Amenhotep III, around 1380 BC. According to the lead engineer's secret report, when the masons struck the base to remove the ancient stones, a sudden tremor rattled the surrounding basilica, and a shockwave shattered the monolith into dozens of irregular shards. Eyewitness accounts recorded in marginal notes of the engineer's diary describe how the fragments seemed to vibrate with a low hum, as though releasing centuries of contained energy. Fearing that the obelisk had been rigged as a hidden vault for dangerous magic, Pope Sixtus V ordered the removal of the fragments and the abandonment of any reconstruction plans. The shattered pieces were buried in ledgers of mortar at the periphery of the Vatican gardens, and the obelisk's pedestal was repurposed as a fountain basin. Centuries later, modern geologists, analyzing a retrieved shard, found microscopic residues of copper compounds and plant oils consistent with the embalming balms used in 18th dynasty mortuary practices. Yet, official Vatican statements maintain that the fracture was a simple case of structural failure. The shattered obelisk endures as a silent warning that beneath Rome's grandeur, ancient rites may lie dormant within stone, and that the echo of Egyptian magic can still reverberate through the heart of the Church's most sacred spaces. High in the papal palace, a secluded chamber known as the Oraculum Noctis was reserved for the Holy Father and his most trusted seers. During the tumultuous years of the War of the Spanish Succession, Pope Clement XI sought guidance beyond earthly counsel and commissioned the chamber's secret use at midnight. According to a sheltered account in the pontiff's private correspondence, an illuminated manuscript bound in black calfskin was brought forth only on these night sits. Latin text interspersed with Demotic glyphs, translated from a 3rd century BC Egyptian papyrus discovered in the library of Alexandria. The text purportedly contained rituals for invoking an oracle spirit to answer the gravest questions facing Christendom. In 1709, as recorded in a letter hidden within a locked desk, Clement himself posed silent queries about the war's outcome and the faith's future. A hooded seer selected from among Coptic clergy and 2 cardinals joined him in the chamber. By the light of a single taper, they chanted verses from the manuscript, blending psalms with Egyptian invocations to Thoth, god of wisdom. Witnesses later described how, at the ritual's apex, a distant thunderclap resonated through the palace, and a parchment scroll appeared mysteriously upon the altar, bearing written responses forecasting the war's twists. Clement recorded his satisfaction and ordered the scroll sealed behind iron bars in a vault beneath St. Peter's. Though the original oracle scroll has never been produced, fragments of its binding were analyzed in the 20th century, revealing fibers from Egyptian papyrus and traces of ink components matching Ptolemaic funeral texts. Yet Vatican archives dismiss the tale as legend, insisting no supernatural means guided papal decisions. The Oraculum Noctis remains a hidden testament to a moment when faith and forbidden magic converged in midnight supplication, and when the Church dared to seek divine light in the words of ancient Egyptian oracle tradition. Deep within the octagonal baptistery of the Lateran, a font carved from porphyry bore an enigmatic inscription in both Greek and Demotic: "The waters remember." In 1722, a clandestine memorandum by the master sacristan revealed that the font had been lined with a mosaic of Nile pebbles harvested near Elephantine and coated with a thin film of resin derived from the tamarisk trees worshipped by Egyptian desert priests. Local laureate in the sacristan's private diary held that water held within the font would absorb the prayers spoken over it and, when poured out, project those petitions back as vivid visions. During a secret ceremony authorized by Pope Innocent XIII, candidates for baptism whispered their deepest confessions at the rim, Then the font's deacon poured the water into silver chalices. Witnesses in the dimly lit chamber reported seeing fleeting images in the liquid: a dying soldier bathed in sunlight, a child reunited with lost parents, or ghostly figures kneeling in hidden chapels. Encouraged by these revelations, the Pope allowed the water to be distributed to those seeking guidance. Yet after several recipients fell into trance-like state of speaking in lost Coptic dialects and claiming to relive past lives, the Holy Office intervened. Fearing that such experiences blurred the line between sacrament and sorcery, they ordered the mosaic liner replaced with plain marble, and the font's original pebbles were dispersed among other churches. Modern geochemical testing of a surviving pebble fragment, catalogued in a private reliquary, confirms traces of silicate minerals and organic resin matching samples from Egyptian temples along the Nile's first cataract. Despite this evidence, Vatican guides describe the font's history only in terms of artistic craftsmanship, omitting its once living memory. The baptistary today stands silent, its christening waters ordinary once more. Yet the legend of the font's remembering endures an echo of a time when the Church invited ancient magic into the heart of sanctifying grace. Hidden behind a false wall in a 17th century corridor of the Vatican Palace lies the Chamber of Thousand Shadows, a windowless room whose walls are inscribed with tiny, interlocking glyphs patterns traced from an Egyptian Book of Shadows scroll carbon dated to around 900 BC. According to clandestine notes by the chamber's designer and engineer under Pope Innocent XII, glyphs were carved at equidistant intervals so that by torchlight, each flicker of flame would cast shifting silhouettes that danced across the inscriptions, animating them like living hieroglyphs. Those permitted entry, including a small cadre of cardinals and Jesuit scholars, reported that standing amid those trembling shadows felt like being surrounded by silent watchers, each shape whispering secrets of fate and prophecy. In 1691, a private account by one such scholar recalls that as he traced a finger along a particular sequence of glyphs under a single taper's glow, he experienced a sudden rush of visions. Distant desert temples, long-lost tombs, and the echo of incantations recited in a tongue he did not understand. Alarmed by the potential for madness or possession, Innocent XII decreed that the chamber be sealed after each use, and that its door be hidden behind tapestries. During the Napoleonic occupation, the tapestries were removed, nearly revealing the room's entrance, but they were hastily returned under orders that the chamber's existence remain a sacred secret. Modern multispectral imaging of a recovered stone fragment confirms the presence of Egyptian blue pigment and traces of organic binders used in New Kingdom temple paintings, evidence that the glyphs were more than decorative. Yet Vatican guides describe the corridor merely as a historical passageway. The Chamber of Thousand Shadows remains a testament to the Church's once intimate hand clandestine engagement with the spectral whispers of Egyptian magic. Beneath a false floorboard in the Vatican's Bibliotheca Apostolica lay a small, unassuming Book of Hours bound in midnight blue velvet. Officially catalogued as a mendicant devotional text from the 15th century, a secret addendum to its accession record reveals another story. During a discreet 1,746 inspection, librarians discovered that many of its illuminated pages had been deliberately scraped away and replaced with prayers to Egyptian guardians, translated from a funerary papyrus dating to around 400 BC. According to an undisclosed memorandum by the chief illuminator, The original hymns invoked Thoth and Anubis as intercessors capable of guiding souls through Paraland. His workshop had interlaced those verses among traditional Latin offices to create a hybrid liturgy of dual protection. The priests who used the book reported that, upon reciting the hidden hours at dawn, they felt an uncanny calm settle over their minds, as though ancient watchers stood sentinel over their prayers. Yet, when Cardinal Prospero Lambertini-Latter, Pope Benedict XIV, learned of the clandestine insertions, he ordered the altered folios removed and secured the original papyrus translations in a lead-lined coffer beneath the library's vault. Restoration teams in the 20th century recovered faint traces of demotic ink beneath the over-painted Latin inscriptions, and spectral analysis of pigment layers confirmed the presence of Egyptian blue mixed with powdered azurite. However, official Vatican descriptions still portray the Book of Hours as an example of regional craftsmanship, making no mention of its hidden rites. The volumes remain on open shelves, their secret prayers waiting silently beneath centuries of ecclesiastical piety. In the dimly lit chamber beneath the Vatican's apostolic library, a bronze key bearing inscriptions in an archaic, demotic script lay forgotten for centuries until its shape caught the torchlight of a curious librarian in 1762. Known secretly as the last key of Thoth, its teeth were carved not in standard wards, but in the likeness of hieroglyphic signs meaning transformation and secret passage, phrases matching a papyrus fragment found in a tomb near Deir el-Medina and dated to approximately 1100 BC. According to a confidential memorandum by the librarian later redacted by pontifical order, the key fit no known lock in the library's official catalog. Instead, when inserted into a narrow slit concealed behind a movable shelf of illuminated manuscripts and turned at midnight, it released a concealed drawer lined with lead. Within the drawer lay a small folded scroll bearing a single invocation, a prayer addressed to Thoth, god of scribes and hidden knowledge, promising that whoever possessed the key would glimpse the church's most closely guarded files. This discovery was brought to the attention of Pope Clement XIII, who convened a private conclave of cardinals to determine its fate. Fearing that the key threatened to expose the Vatican's secret dealings with ancient magical texts, they ordered that the key and scroll be sealed within a stone reliquary and dropped into a well on the estate of a trusted cardinal outside Rome. Modern metallurgical analysis of a surviving replicapt under high security in the archivist's office confirms the original key's alloy matched Egyptian bronze from the late Ramesside period, infused with trace elements of gold meant to symbolize divine favor. Yet Vatican historians maintain the key was a decorative copy of an antique artifact. The true last key of Thoth, however, remains submerged beneath earth in silence, its promise of revelation lying dormant until the moment arises to unlock its power. Deep within the Vatican's vaults lies the final and most feared document of the collection, a thin, leather-bound dossier known simply as the Testament of Amun-Ra. According to a guarded entry in the Cardinal Archivist's ledger, the text was compiled in 1773 by a monk who had spent years translating fragments of a 16th century BC temple archive from Karnak. His notes claim the testament recorded rites capable of binding the very essence of a soul to an object, be it stone, metal, or parchment ensuring eternal loyalty, or silencing a spirit forever. The dossier's pages, now yellowed and brittle, describe a ceremony involving 7 consecrated vessels filled with oils, salts, and the purified ashes of sacred bulls, arranged beneath a standing obelisk provided by the Order of Malta. A single scribe would recite alternating verses from the Gospel of John and the Egyptian coffin texts, weaving prayers for redemption alongside invocations of divine servitude. On the night of its first performance witnessed by a clandestine circle of friars, and a single Cardinal, the air in the chamber grew so thick with charged energy that torch flames bent away as if recoiling. The Cardinal recorded in his private journal that he felt his own spirit cool and condense, as though he had become the object of someone else's soul-binding. Horrified by the ritual's power, Pope Clement XIV decreed the testament's immediate suppression, mandating its placement within a triple-locked iron chest and its vault buried beneath layers of stone, salt, and consecrated soil. No copy was permitted, and the monk who translated it vanished from all records. Modern forensic analysis of the testament's binding found trace compounds matching those used in Egyptian mummification practices, while spectroscopic tests detected residues of ancient papyrus fibers embedded in its leather. Yet, Vatican scholars dismiss these findings as misattributed craftsmanship. The testament of Amun-Ra remains the Church's most chilling secret, a text that, once read, could forever alter the boundary between body, soul, and the ancient magic that seeks to possess them.